Hey, everybody. Welcome to Fridays with Steve. Today, we're going to be talking a little bit about M&A and domain migrations and tenant-to-tenant migrations. I'll bring some historical perspective to some of these things. And when I was thinking about what to use as sort of a backdrop for the conversation, what I did is I took and grabbed an asset from our company working with an unnamed company around this exact thing, whether it's mergers or divestitures, spin-outs or hostile takeovers. We do a lot of this kind of work. So I just wanted to spend a little bit of time setting the stage and talking a little bit about M&A activity. It's some of the history, but then I think the bulk, I will just kind of walk you through some of our thinking, some of how we attack this area, and how we service clients that look to us for help. So this has always been a part of not just the business landscape, but the technology landscape. I've worked in a number of different places that have had different lenses on this business. Early in my consulting career, I had a number of opportunities to do things like due diligence around technology environments, make sure there weren't landmines for the acquisition team, doing some of the migrations and things like that. And now here at Apex, as you can see that the long-term trend for M&A is up and to the right. A little lumpy over the last few years due to lots of different reasons, whether it's the state of the economy and inflation and the cost of capital, or whether it's worldwide health issues or whatever it might be. It's gotten a little bit lumpier, but you could see that ended a strong run of just increase. And it's something that will always be a part of the business. Frankly, here in the technology industry, as an MSP, we are constantly both approached and approaching others about, hey, where are there opportunities to, it starts with partnering, but potentially ends in buyouts or mergers and those kinds of things. There's been a lot of consolidation in our industry, and we're a proud, privately held, employee focused, delivering for customers organization. But we exist in an industry where a lot of these things happen. And I think a lot of folks think about the business synergies and the savings from collapsing, operations and supply chains and things like that. But oftentimes, a big portion of the story is technology, disparate systems, and bringing together directories and security and HR platforms. Honestly, are some of the biggest hurdles to these kinds of things. It's perhaps real easy to add products to the product catalog of a field sales force. It's a little bit different to have everybody on payroll from the same provider, right? So some different challenges, but it's always been a part of the consulting business. And for even, those of you who work as IT, staff and leaders in organizations, it's very possibly a part of your life as well. And so there's a long history in this space. I wonder how many of you can identify these two things from their SNPs. But we've come a long way from on-prem domain directories, or frankly even other tools like NetWare and others, to the cloud. Microsoft 365 providing this kind of infrastructure for many, many organizations. And frankly, most of the time, we are doing tenant-to-tenant migrations or tenant-to-tenant relationships, rules, forwarding, emails, mailbox moves, those kinds of things, because there's a lot of consolidation on that platform for people's backends. We still see on-prem Active Directory sometimes. We see hybrid modes. We see on-prem files and SharePoint and things like that. But what's fun is fun is probably an interesting word for it, right? What's really helped is that a lot of folks have, independently made the move to cloud directory services, to cloud services, to cloud-based applications, or at least, local applications that map into, cloud equivalents and things like that. And that's changed the nature of the job. On the left, I mean, I can't tell you how many hours I've spent, probably days and weeks, in user manager for domains. Sometimes moves and architecture changes were created by there was about a 40,000 object, if I'm remembering correctly, a 40,000 object limit in on-prem Active Directory domains back in like the NT351, NT40 timeframe. And so sometimes large organizations would just run out of space. Objects were people, system accounts, computer accounts, server accounts, groups, all of those things. And so, you could run out fast in a sizable organization. I'm thinking back to the start of my career at Target. And so oftentimes you were compelled to move even when you didn't want to, or re-architect when you didn't want to. It wasn't even necessarily M&A. And then with on-prem files, that's robocopy on the right-hand side. You were really fancy if you knew robocopy existed. And the number one tool that we all had was the NT40 resource kit with its assemblage of tools created by Microsoft and some outside of Microsoft people that got acquired. Mark Rusinovich, who I think still leads a lot of the Azure work at Microsoft. He came to Microsoft through an acquisition of a company called Sysinternals. And Sysinternals made their business simply creating tools that made the Microsoft world manageable, right? Bulk ads and troubleshooting tools and things like that. I can't tell you again how valuable those were. But tenant to tenant or domain to domain migrations looked very different historically, and now they've taken on a very different flavor. I just snipped a couple of pages from, the architecture guidance that Microsoft provides us and frankly provides customers as well about, hey, how do you think about sequencing these things? What do you do? Pre-cut over? What do you do at the event? What do you do after the event? I'll talk a little bit about that from an Apex perspective here in a couple of minutes. And it's a vastly different world. Our engineering team brings to bear, a number of different things. Number one is their expertise and experience, right? If you're, a customer IT leader, IT staff, you might have the opportunity to do this, once in your tenure at an organization or once in your career. We do this every day, right? And so it's sort of like, going to the barber for a haircut versus cutting your own hair. Meaning, when you cut your own hair, you can't really see that well, and you only do it once every couple months, or if you're me, like once a year. And the barber's doing that each and every day, and you just slide into one of those appointments and you get all that expertise, right? A quick sidebar. One of the conversations that I still have occasionally with customers is, trying to help them understand things like hourly rate. Sometimes customers do the math and they're like, oh, this is a lot. And the answer is always, you're not paying me for this hour of time. You're paying me for the 30 years or for this whole organization that got us to this 1 hour of time, right? Because we're bringing all those things to bear. I had some work done at the house. And conceptually, I know I could have done it, but I don't have the tools in a trailer and the expertise, and it's a 3-hour job versus a 3-week job kind of thing. And so, that's a strong consideration that you need to have around, most valuable use of time, most valuable use of your expertise and experience, because it probably lies in the business. While the business, informs some of these tenant-to-tenant migration decisions, it isn't necessarily the best use of your time monitoring mailbox moves or, crafting the PowerShell script that you'll use once. We have PowerShell scripts that we use each and every day. And so it's a vastly different world. And so I grabbed this presentation. I just want to talk through a few slides, and kind of the call to action is, if you're in this situation, give us a call and see if we can help. And so, when we lay out these projects, and I'm actually doing a project internally that has a lot of these same compelling factors, right? I need to think about a lot of things because there's a lot of things that you're touching, right? It's not just tenant setup, right? It's moving the data, it's moving the files, it's setting up the tools either to mimic the tools, something like Defender, right? Do we want to configure the same as in the old environment, or is this an opportunity to make changes? Are we going to incorporate new things? What about voice? More and more of us have our communication and collaboration tools collapsed into our Microsoft 365 environment. All of a sudden that, those domain changes I made at Target in 1997 had nothing to do with whether or not the phones rang, right? Had nothing to do with how we communicated with our vendors or with our stores. Now that might be a very different sort of environment. So you got to think about all these things. What about Teams rooms, right? If they're customers of ours, hopefully they've started to adopt Teams room. They've certainly heard the pitch. And even something like printing, is something to consider in this space. One of the lenses that we bring to an M&A project like this one is how much do you change versus how much do you port over versus how much do you leave behind. One of my first projects at Target was rolling out lots of different things to our critical marketers at Target, the ones, doing the marketing in store, at 10 floors worth of people here in downtown Minneapolis. And in one night, we changed them from IBM hardware to Dell hardware. We changed the networking from token ring to Ethernet. We changed the sort of the routing and switching environment. This is very early, from dumb hubs to switches with something called spanning tree. And oh, by the way, we changed them from OS2 to Windows. The early days of that project were really tough because when things went wrong, we sort of had no idea what to blame or how to troubleshoot it, right? Is this physical layer? Is this network? Is this application? Is it OS? And so what Apex does is, as the slide sort of outlines, is we bring a lens to, like I said, what do you change? What do you port over? And what do you leave behind? And so, we think about these things and give the customer ways to sort of identify the work streams. In some of the guts of the deck here that I didn't include because it was, customer proprietary information, Apex proprietary information is, we put these things into categories so you can see the work streams, so you can see how these things work and flow together. I left in a couple of high-level views of how we talked about the timeline, right? So based on those different, work streams, where did it fall? This is a project from last year. When are we doing things? What are the dependencies? What can go in parallel? How do you keep multiple teams busy? I think that's another great lens that a partner like Apex, other partners as well, brings to it, is where is there parallelism? Where is there the opportunity to get multiple things done at once? And then frankly, what are the things that are dependent in these moves? What can coexist and what can only have one instance? Lots of great stories of, learning those kinds of things the hard way, right? When you turn a an old school domain controller that's brand new on and put it on the production network, if it doesn't have a replicated copy of sign-in information, it'll happily start telling people that I'm happy to help you sign on, but then not have the information to sign them on. That was something that happened to us, bringing that new domain controller online in a non-controlled way, and all of a sudden nobody could log in one Monday morning. So knowing what you can do in parallel, knowing what has to be a single instance, lots of those kinds of insights get brought to bear. We also try and whether it's your project managers or our own project managers, really try to give the business the opportunity to see the progress and see how these things work together and how progress is being made towards the end. There are old jokes about whether it's IBM Global Services or whether it's Salesforce Consulting that you buy the product and the consulting sort of never goes away. Our goal, believe me, with something like this, we make fixed bid proposals. We don't soak people for time and materials. And so it really is on us to find those efficiencies and find those parallelisms. So the other thing I wanted to touch on is I think there's an ongoing story too. Some of our most frustrated customers are where we've allowed them to sort of talk us into doing a project and then walking away or sort of coming off the clock, right? The world has really changed when it comes to SaaS, when it comes to all of the things that we use. It's really more about adoption and customer success than it is buying the license, right? In the old days, you bought the license, the vendor, whether it was Microsoft or NetWare or whoever, got their money and it was your job to make it work on-prem. Now with cloud services, with, month-to-month bills, annual or even sometimes monthly kind of contracts and opt-outs, it's really about adoption and success. And so whenever we do these tenant-to-tenant migrations, we really want to talk to customers about, hey, well, what happens day two, right? What happens after, like you saw on that Gantt or on that project chart, that there was corporate-wide training and there was these kinds of things. But one of the things we do is we position, what does the ongoing engagement look like? How do we stay engaged at the right level based on your maturity, right? So we have this notion of ready and ignite and empower and, really using empower to stay engaged with customers. And so in this instance, that's exactly, what we positioned with this customer and successfully delivered is, hey, I want to stick around on day two, right? It's not it's value creation for both customer and Apex, right? This isn't a money grab. This isn't a service that, you buy and forget about, like your unlimited monthly car washes. This is really saying, hey, day two, we're here for your IT team. You're in this brand new environment. Lots of things were taken care of. But the universe tends towards entropy, right? Starting on day two, things start to change or break down or get updated or, people come and go, and those kinds of things naturally happen in an environment. And keeping us engaged with Empower is really a strong way to keep the ball rolling. And it's not a huge price point, but it delivers advisory services. It delivers support for your IT team. It delivers customer success managers, technical account managers, really to make sure that your new car keeps its new car smell. And I think this is one of those instances where If the customer wasn't on our Empower program before the migration, they kind of go, well, I didn't have it before. Why do I need it now? I think it's really a great opportunity to say, hey, we just spent a month or 6 months with you, you know, level setting everything, putting everything in good working order, and handing you the keys to this new car. But we want to help you keep it, like I said, with that new car smell. And so that's kind of how we walked through this project, the positioning, as well as delivering a tenant-to-tenant migration in this M&A space. And we're passionate about this stuff. Like I said, I think one of the challenges you face each and every day as an IT leader is where to spend your time, right? And I know most of you aren't spending your time on local machine backup management anymore, or even things like hand deploying virus signatures to endpoints and so forth. I'm so old. I used to have floppy disks for installing the TCP/IP stack on machines, right? There's things that fall off the bottom of your priority list, and that's where Apex can help, right? We've got economies of scale. We see this with hundreds of customers. And so the whole goal of Empower, the whole goal of our project services is to get you to a point where you're doing that business value add technology. We'd like to help you there as well, but sometimes it's just about getting you the time. And so if you're a nonprofit, and you're watching this semi-live, next week we'll be delivering an event, nonprofits moving to NCE. If you're a commercial customer, you've already made that legacy to NCE move. Nonprofits are going to be going through the same thing. And so just like I laid out with tenant-to-tenant migrations, we do this all the time. We bring a lot of knowledge and experience to the table. We do the same with these NCE transitions. And so we're really excited to both help and educate our nonprofit customers as well as the broader community. Really looking forward to this event. We'll be open for questions, as well as booking follow-ups with customers, new and existing. And so go ahead and register for that licensing webinar. Visit our webpage to see the solutions for nonprofits as well as for migrations. And go ahead and book a meeting, whether it's with me or with my team. We're ready to help. You can also just contact me directly, Thompson, STHOMPSON at apexdigital.com, and I'll be watching for your message. We'd love to create a tenant-to-tenant migration project plan like the one you saw today. But that's it for today. Thanks for joining me on Fridays with Steve, and we'll see you next time.